that moves us into our final section of our show, which we've somewhat combined, called Matters of the Heart. So we have combined Matters of the Heart and What's Good in Your Hood.
Yes, sir.
Together, because it's really merged together here. We've taken some time today to think about what the answers could be to the age-old question about settling and feeling settled in. So as people that have migrated from home, we've immigrated, we are now in foreign lands, and it takes some time to feel settled. It takes some time to feel integrated, to feel like you belong where you've moved to. And these are the considerations that both Tyler and I have had to ponder on for our respective timelines that we've been in our countries. I think I'd kick off by thinking about a few questions that have popped up in my mind. So, number one, culture and just the general social environment of my new home. Let's call it home for now. It's been a big change. 100% not what I thought it was going to be. We are led down a particular route when we look at movies, films, after movies, of events. There's a lot of content out there that can give an indication of what a place is supposed to look like.
Yes.
And once you're actually in it, it doesn't always live up to the billing.
Yeah.
So for me, the cultural differences has been quite an adjustment. I mentioned previously in other episodes the dynamic of having been majority to now being a minority in terms of demographics. That has been quite a challenge, because you'd want someone that you can relate to. You want someone that you can kind of find shared experiences through, and through that you could potentially form a bond, make a friend, and have that be the start of your growing of the social hub. So that's something that I'm still working with. It has been really hard to integrate, really hard to understand people that aren't always willing to let you into the social circuit. So how do I understand you if you don't give room for an opportunity? That was the first consideration. That also leads to integration. Another obvious example was the weather and the climate. So massively different to what it's like in South Africa. The African side.
Have you found that very difficult?
I have found
the weather
a bit of a challenge.
Okay.
So far, we're in autumn now, and autumn back home is a light jacket. It's something like that. Whereas here, autumn would probably mean breaking out the K-ways, putting on a beanie. It's real. Get the gumboots ready, because it's not only cold, but it's rainy and very windy.
Okay.
So if this is a precursor to winter, I'm scared to think what winter is apparently going to be like.
Winter rains like a lot, isn't it?
And the daylight, the amount of daylight you get in a day. Apparently, sun would start setting at around 3 o'clock.
Yeah.
In the UK. So
that's early.
It's a very shortened day.
Yeah.
So it's going to be a big adjustment. Waking up, darkness. You leave, you go to work, it's dark. You work, by the time you finish work, it's dark again.
Yeah.
And I'm curious to see how my body adjusts to something like that. That's another big consideration. And then I'd also say, from my point of view, I suffer a lot with sinuses. So the change in season has been quite a difficult thing to overcome. Thankfully, there are medications, there are remedies that one can try to get through. So that's another important consideration. And familiarity. I think that's been the biggest lesson learned for me.
Okay. Okay.
I had this, like I said, I've had this idea of what the UK would look like from the accounts that people have told me, but I guess I hadn't taken into consideration living versus holidaying in a place are completely two different things.
Yeah.
So someone's experience on holiday in England, and notably everyone goes into London, obviously.
Yes.
When they come to the UK. Oh, it's great. There's nightlife. There's a lot to do. There's people always around. You can socialize. You can do A, B, and C, which isn't always the case when you move outside of London. So once you've moved out of the tourist hubs of the country, what does that mean? What does it translate to? And yeah, that's been something I've constantly had to remind myself that, yes, you can go into London, you can have a great time, you can enjoy, watch the football, have quite a diverse range of foods, meet people, whilst you're doing social activities. But once you're in your actual community, how do you integrate? How do you feel settled? We're so used to, so Africans by nature are very helpful people. We believe in the ethos of Ubuntu.
Yeah.
I help you, you help the next person. We're all benefiting through the shared help, shared experience here. And
yes.
It's been quite a battle to try and want that from local people when it's not ingrained in them. I find that through my brief interaction with some of the local people, it's like pulling water through rock.
Yeah.
You're really trying to get them to be something that they might not ordinarily be. Being helpful, jumping at people's aids, giving, just good acts of...
acts of kindness or whatever.
Kindness, yeah.
I mean, I will say though, like, I think one of the biggest things that we have to remember when you move anywhere, it can be within your country, it can be overseas. I think you also have to, and it's a hard lesson to learn, but you have to change your expectations a little bit. There's so many factors that have led to South Africans adopting the sense of Ubuntu, which is, it's not even like a nationwide given wherever you go. We are used to it. It's definitely a very frequent thing. But you also have to understand, like, there's a whole different bunch of factors that have come together and culminate into creating something. And I think, we as people, we find comfort in familiarity, right? We find that we need that kind of familiarity, and as soon as it starts to change, it starts to become very difficult for us, and it's kind of like, I'm struggling because people aren't doing X, Y, and Z, and it's kind of like, yeah, but they don't. There's X amount of million people that live there, and that's not part of their culture, and I think it's difficult, though. It is difficult to kind of go through that, like for me, or for us, I found one of the biggest challenges naturally was language. I mean, it's a completely different language. And it's in the same token of how I can't turn around and expect people to just speak English. I don't know if we can turn around and expect people to have a certain nature either, if you know what I'm saying. Like, and I think that's also just something to bear in mind. It's kind of like living in the present and understanding that, this is the way it is. And I know it sucks. Of course it sucks a lot, but that's kind of like just what I've had to learn here. It's like, it is what it is, man. Like, there's push and pull factors. There's things that are, difficult. There's things that are easy. You talk about climate, the challenges that you're going through in Thailand, the seasons are hot, very hot, and raining. Those are the three seasons that you get, right? And obviously that took time to adjust. I've never felt so comfortable with sweat, man. Like, honestly, I've never, like, it's serious. It's really crazy. And when I was back home, I felt very uncomfortable when I used to sweat, right? So it's like, there's like this, I don't like it. Whereas here, it's like, you're going to waste your time if you're going to feel uncomfortable sweating, because that's just the reality. That's where you live.
Yeah.
And I think for me, once I started accepting and understanding that this is just the way things go, sometimes, like, there's a lot of things that people can complain about being here. There's a lot of things to love about being here. You got to take everything with a little kind of pinch of salt, you know. And I think the big question that we're kind of dealing with here is like, when do you start to feel at home, right? Or when do you start to feel comfortable within that space? And it's such a tough question to answer, because I just think there's so many things about it that there's so many angles that it will come at, you know. Arguably, there's times when you live at home when you don't feel at home, right? There's times when scenarios change for you at home and you feel very uncomfortable, right? And it's the same thing when you move abroad, except you don't have that fallback. You don't have that family that you can go see. You don't have that kind of support system. And that's kind of where it starts getting a little bit challenging. For me, I'll say, I'm not so sure when it happened that I felt at home here, but you know, there's also a thing here. I'm not sure what it's going to be like in the UK. There's a sense that you are always somewhat of a foreigner, you know, here, to an extent. You look completely different to the locals, like completely different. You stand out. And B, like getting visas and etc. is quite challenging. And it's something that we talk about quite often, is like how the challenges that come associated with that. But then on the other hand, you know, there's times that I felt here more comfortable than I ever have. And now, do you attribute that to yourself as an individual? Like, I'm comfortable with who I am at this time, and therefore my space feels more homely. You know, that's also maybe a little bit philosophical and deep to think about, but that, I think all of these things kind of play a part. And I would my caution would be to people is like, it's easier said than done, but try not to have an expectation based on your experiences in a country that is thousands of kilometers away, with a completely different history, with a completely different climate, with a completely different, I would warn people, like, I didn't know, like, people said when you move it's going to be a culture shock. I'm like, no, why? Like, I was like, big deal. I was like, why would it be a culture shock? I'm a man of the world. I'm diverse. I understand things. And I got you, and it was a culture shock, legit. But I guess, like, that's kind of what I would say about it. It's just, you got to take it for what it is. You got to be where you are. You got to forge. You got to make those efforts. I've said to you before, like, you say you struggle a little bit socially in terms of getting into the social groups. I believe things like Meetup, I told you about that website where you find like-minded people. I've learned that you really have to make an effort if you want things to change. I play touch rugby. That's like my thing here. I've made a lot of friends doing that. And that's because of the effort that I've made. And that's kind of like what has helped me feel at home, is putting in that effort, going that extra mile to meet like-minded people. Yeah,
no, very true. Perspective is a wonderful thing. So like you said, open yourself up to realizing that there's so much beyond your lived experience. There is a whole new world, literally, that you haven't seen for your entire life, that you're now being privy to. And it's something that like you said, takes work, it takes effort. You have to put yourself in these positions, put yourself in these places, evaluate, say, look, as uncomfortable as it is, I want a change. If I'm not happy with the way the things are currently, the current state of things, then I need to be the one that actions the change.
Because I can guarantee you're not the only person who feels this way. You're not the 100%. Only person who feels isolated and alone, and that people around you are unfriendly. So your job or your mission would be to find the people that have that same feeling, and you get together.
100%. And in that sense of familiarity, or that shared experience, then so much that can bloom from that. So great advice there on what makes you feel like home. So guys, sometimes you get a free therapy session here as well.
Sometimes you do. I the big vibes over here. Yeah. No, I think that's a nice kind of little piece of advice or whatever to give to people. You have to learn to be okay being uncomfortable. Be okay to sweat. That's what I learned. Yeah, you got to be okay to sweat. Emotionally, physically, you just got to be okay to be a little bit uncomfortable. And as soon as you can accept that little bit of uncomfortableness, you're able to breathe. So thanks everyone. I guess no, thanks. It was a fun episode. I enjoyed recording that one.
Yeah, I was going to say thanks again for giving us your ears, giving us your eyes,
your time
with us, your time. Oh man, it's the one thing that is the precious commodity of this world. So we do thank you for sharing it with us. Thank you for all the interactions, the messages, the comments. We appreciate you guys engaging and just telling us what you think. Telling us what you think about our podcast, telling us some of the stories we've covered,
suggestions,
everything, suggestions. It means a lot. And thank you for allowing us to share parts of ourselves with you. We really enjoyed last week's episode with our wives, and like Tyler said, we have a lot of special guests that we're going to be including in our podcasts going forward. So stay tuned for that. It's going to be really fun, really exciting. You're going to get so much insight into these respective areas that you might not have known too much about. So stay tuned, man. And again, thanks so much for joining us. We really love this one. We will certainly catch you at the next one. Again, reminder, like, subscribe, comment, engage. Rate,
all our social the nice networks. Things.
We're on Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Spotify, YouTube, TikTok, Instagram, and our website. So all our links are available there. We will see you guys at the next one. Thank you so much for joining us.
Catch you later.
Cheerio.
Bye-bye.